On this episode, we visit Blacksburg, Virginia, and talk with the advocate who led the campaign for the Huckleberry Trail. Then we head west to San Diego, where a dangerous intersection lies between elderly residents and their synagogue. Researchers at San Diego State University explore the relationship between walkable communities and physical activity. A bit farther west in Hawaii, we look at problems resulting from head injuries. A Hawaii state delegate from EVA heads an effort to improve pedestrian and traffic safety in his district. Up north in Anchorage, we visit Access Alaska to discuss obstacles confronting pedestrians with disabilities. And finally, a major apartment complex in Alexandria, Virginia, is not easy to reach on foot. Stay tuned.
That's good, Jake.
We're at Bogan's Restaurant in Blacksburg, Virginia, talking with Bill Ellenbogen. You got an award last night at the Bike Walk Virginia conference. What did you get the award for?
Well, they called me a local hero for being involved in developing the Huckleberry Trail, a multi-purpose trail, recreational trail that runs from Blacksburg to Christiansburg, Virginia. I'm not quite sure I'm a local hero, but I certainly was involved in helping to develop the trail.
And you used the word catalyst last night. What did you mean by that?
I think in any volunteer project, it takes a person who is not afraid to be pushy at times and get things moving where roadblocks occur and get past the roadblocks. And I acted as a catalyst in trying to get the various other elements of the plan moving forward. There were moments when the plan stalled, and I think I was helpful in keeping it moving along. So that's how I was a catalyst. There were many other people involved. There were lots of agents, and a catalyst uses other agents to accomplish things. And there were so many people from governments and private sector and volunteers that were involved in developing this multi-purpose trail. It was really a nice project, and it's been well received by the community.
Why is a trail like this important? What does it do for the community?
I think quality of life issues, every community has roads, every community has schools, every community has fire departments. What really makes a quality of life are the recreational opportunities and cultural opportunities that are available to the citizenry. And in Blacksburg, we have been working hard, and Montgomery County as well, working hard to develop a set of recreational amenities that allow people to commute and walk and recreate in their spare time, which of course raises the quality of life. I think that's so important to creating a first-class community.
Now that this part of the trail's done, what's the next step? What are you working on now?
Well, our community has a national forest right on our border, but we don't have good access to the national forest. And we are attempting to extend the Huckleberry Trail. It's currently about a 6-mile trail, and we hope to extend it about 2 or 3 more miles until it enters the national forest. Within the national forest, the Jefferson National Forest, there are 100,000 acres and 30 miles of trails. By adding about 3 miles to the Huckleberry Trail, we can then add another 30 miles that lie within the national forest. It's just a great opportunity. We really look forward to trying to do that. We Friends of the Huckleberry, the nonprofit group that I've been involved with for the past 12 years, has acquired this 20-acre parcel that we're calling the Gateway Park. It will provide the actual entrance to the National Forest. It adjoins the National Forest. We hope to create a really nice 20-acre recreational park that intersects with the Huckleberry Trail. We've tried to create what we call a greenway and not just a trail. We have got a number of small pocket parks, we call them, that lie along the trail and help provide areas of interest where if you get to the Huckleberry, you not only can ride the trail, but you can also stop at various places and picnic, and there's some concerts from time to time on the trail. It's become a pretty good focus for the community. So.
How does the Huckleberry Trail relate to other trails?
Well, it seems like the trail system in Virginia, the future of it, and across the country, there's a major attempt to connect recreational trails to other recreational trails to develop a true network. And we have hopes of connecting the Huckleberry Trail to the National Forest Trail system, and going the other direction to the south, we hope to connect to the New River Trail State Park, and perhaps the New River Trail State Park can connect to the Creeper Trail. And it would be wonderful to have a trail that you could hop on one end of Virginia and ride to the opposite end, or even better yet, have trails where you could ride on one end of the United States to the other end, all off-road. That's our long-range goal and I think that's a vision of many people involved in recreational cycling and walking.
We're in San Diego talking with Richard Goodwin. What's this intersection behind us?
It's Golf Crest and Navajo.
What's it like for a pedestrian trying to get across?
It's a very uncomfortable event that the cars are coming downhill very quickly. And we have 5 lanes here to cross and about 3 lanes over on this side.
Has it been a problem for pedestrians historically?
Well, I don't know historically, but we had a member of our synagogue killed 2 years ago walking across the street. And unfortunately, the city's reaction was that since he was elderly, this is what I'm surmising, they did absolutely nothing. There's been no crosswalk put in on either side for pedestrians to cross. And conversely, about a mile and a half away from here, a high school student or a junior high was walking across the street at the same and killed about 2 weeks earlier. And immediately the next day there was a 4-way stop sign put in and a traffic signal belt. And I just feel like for elderly people, they say they have enough time, but we don't necessarily feel that's the way. And we'd like maybe some kind of traffic calming put in, like maybe perhaps an island for the pedestrians to stop, or a narrowing of lanes, or some of the other functions that the city could provide as far as traffic calming.
Do you have a lot of elderly residents trying to get across here?
Well, when they come to the synagogue on Saturday, yes, we do, and they come from those buildings over there, here, and it's been a problem, and you're just always praying that nothing happens. In fact, that's why we're moving across the street over to there, and but now we have the other worries that we have younger families with small children that are going to have to cross this intersection as well.
We're talking with Jim Salas, who's professor of psychology at San Diego State University. What sort of research have you been done that involves walking?
Well, we're just kind of gearing up. I think we're really in the early stages of our research on walking. But maybe I'll tell you about a study that we've just finished, that we've been working on a couple of years, and that we've done right here in San Diego. It's kind of a pilot study for something bigger, but something that's giving us some very interesting results anyway. And what we've done is we're trying to understand the how much walkable versus non-walkable communities relate to overall physical activity. Because the transportation literature shows that high walkable and low walkable communities differ quite a bit on walking for transportation and cycling for transportation. And we actually reviewed that literature and found that it's a difference of about, across different studies, about 1 to 2 kilometers per week walking for an average adult, translating to about 15 to 30 minutes of walking for transportation per person. And that translates into about 3,000 to 6,000 calories per year, which could lead to, all other things being equal, a pound or 2 of weight loss or lack of weight gain in a year. And since the average adult in this country gains a pound or 2 a year, just living in a walkable community could conceivably solve that problem. So that's what the transport literature says. So now we've been interested in how does all this relate to overall physical activity, because that's what's related to health. And so we did a study. We found a kind of a we found a more walkable community in San Diego, and by that we mean in this community it was basically a one long street of commercial. And next to that was some apartment buildings. So there's where you get a little bit of density. And then around that, there was a pretty good street network, but mostly single-family houses. And then we found kind of a matching, so same age of residents and basically the same income. But it was very little mixed use, in fact, almost none. It was almost no apartments, so the density was lower, and it was by a lot of canyons, so the streets were much less connected. So in the city of San Diego, that was about the best extremes that we could come up with. And what we found, so what did we do? We, within each of these communities, we randomly sampled 100 people. And it's taken us a while to get all them together. And we had them fill out a survey, because we were testing out a survey of perceptions about their neighborhood, about its density, about its mixed use, about its connectivity, about the aesthetics, how nice it is to walk around, about pedestrian amenities, sidewalks and crossings, and about safety from traffic as well as safety from crime. So we're trying to develop these measures to help us study this in lots of different places. And the other thing we did is we had them wear an accelerometer, an activity monitor, so we could see actually how much activity do they get, not just based on their self-report. So we haven't analyzed everything yet, but we have seen that our questionnaire works pretty well. Almost all of the indices were different. They were different on density and different on mixed use and that sort of thing. And most importantly for us, the physical activity was different. And when we compared the averages for the two communities, it was people in the high walkability neighborhoods were about 30% more physically active. And this is total activity. And that's a lot. That's a lot bigger difference than we get when we do educational programs most of the time. So this is really exciting for us. It's kind of the first look at this question of what difference does a walkable community make to overall physical activity? And as I said, we're just starting to analyze it, and we'll be able to look more specifically at reports of walking for transportation and walking for recreation. But that's our kind of key findings so far that really excites us.
We're in Honolulu talking with Robin Brandt, who's a researcher with the PBRRTC. What is the PBRRTC?
PBRRTC stands for Pacific Basin Rehabilitation Research and Training Center. It was originally funded by research and training funds through the National Institute on Rehabilitation Research and Training, which still exists and still hands out funds for specific research. More recently, new funds have been put out for rehabilitation engineering centers. That's an example of something that needs research.
One of the areas where people need a lot of rehabilitation is head injuries. How serious a problem is head injuries?
Head injury is a lot more prevalent than we think. I have some data from some flyers from the Brain Injury Association at the national level, and there are three groups of or ages of people who have brain injury more often than others. It's 0 to 5 years of age, 15 to 24 years of age, and those are folks who are elderly over the age of 75. Now, in terms of them being participating in pedestrian injuries or traffic crashes, it says on the back of one of these that during their teenage years, in 1996, there were approximately 82,000 pedestrians injured in traffic crashes, the majority of whom sustained a brain injury. Most people wouldn't think about that. And it's even worse when you're talking about crashes in cars, but let's focus on pedestrians. In 1995, it was estimated that about 50,000 children were hit by motor vehicles and often received serious brain injuries. Now, even if the brain injury isn't serious, requiring hospitalization, a mild or moderate injury could leave someone feeling dazed or starry-headed or lightheaded, or even removing your memory of what happened that day. But many times, at least the way I grew up, if you got hurt and you got up and you functioned, you were fine. We have much better opportunities using CAT scans or MRIs, magnetic resonance images. Physicians can sometimes see that damage more readily now than they could 20, 30 years ago because those technologies weren't available. But it still doesn't detect every single injury that takes place. And for the folks who are elderly, in 1995, for people who were aged 70 or older, about 18% of the pedestrians were in that age categories and had very high, well, that's a fatality rate. So you can see that it really is a problem because we are the most vulnerable group out on the streets.
And for someone, serious head injury, they're lucky because they didn't die, but what can be some of the implications for a serious head injury?
They're very varied, and brain injury is individualized. You can't say that there's one certain thing for every particular person who has a brain injury. Some people may have short-term loss of memory. Other people have a longer-term loss of memory. Some people will have multiple disabilities, physical or behavioral difficulties after a brain injury. Some people may not be able to speak or speak as well, or organize their thoughts, or organize the activities in their life. So it's completely individualized in a way that you don't find with a lot of other people who have different other types of disabilities.
We're in Eva Beach talking with Willie Aspero. You're with the State House of Representatives, and you also have something called the Eva Pedestrian Coalition. What's that?
Yes, sir. It's a group of individuals who got together, thanks to the State Department of Transportation and our federal DOT, to look at ways that we can improve traffic and pedestrian safety in certain areas and roadways in our community.
And what sort of problems do you have in Eva?
Well, this area is the fastest growing area in the state. We're right next door to Kapolei, and within our own district, we've got two major developments, Ocean Point Haseko and Eva by Gentry Homes. So we've got this main roadway, Fort Weaver Road, which is just getting really congested because of the new homes being built. And especially in the mornings and in the late afternoon, we've got problems with people running across the street. It's almost like a two-lane or four-lane freeway, two in and out, and it's just a real safety problem that we have to look at, and hopefully we can improve upon it so no one gets killed in this area here.
Now, what sort of possible solutions were people looking at your meeting this evening?
Quite a bit, actually. One is a stoplight. However, there are some people in the community that want an actual stoplight because we've already got about a dozen or so lights on the road. Another option was a tunnel or underpass or an overpass, rumble strips and slowing down traffic to maybe 20, 25 miles per hour, and maybe a pedestrian activated light or a flashing light. So there were quite a few possibilities, and I think the consensus of the meeting was maybe an overpass might be the best option, and maybe look at the idea of a stoplight if the lights are synchronized.
What sort of resources are available for a group to look at safety like this? Where'd the funding come from?
Well, we received our funding from the federal government. It's part of a program, their Safe Communities projects, where they're looking for projects within all 50 states that might need assistance and help in terms of easing and preventing pedestrian injuries.
The state legislature, what do you anticipate they'll be looking at in terms of pedestrian safety issues in the next term?
Well, as a matter of fact, just this session, there was a bill which was introduced, which was being dubbed by the newspapers as a pedestrian Bill of Rights. And it had to do with people's approaches to the crosswalks, and even had to do with pedestrians themselves, some of the jaywalkers. Recently here in Hawaii, we've had a few fatalities where jaywalkers have been crossing where they shouldn't be crossing, or people have been speeding and not really giving pedestrians the right of way. So at the legislature, we're looking at it, and I'm also the vice chair of transportation. So when we get projects and ideas like this that come from the community or community-based, hopefully we'll be able to look at some that are maybe financially feasible and see if we could provide some funding or maybe get some matching money from the federal government.
We're in Anchorage, Alaska, talking with Daryl Nelson, who's a community advocate for Access Alaska. What is Access Alaska?
Access Alaska is a nonprofit organization for people with disabilities. It is a independent living center. It helps people become learn more about physically independent and also financially independent as much as possible, or get to people that they have like personal care attendants, people to help them with the day-to-day activities and that kind of stuff.
What sort of difficulties would a person with multiple disabilities have trying to get around as a pedestrian?
The part that is mostly important or difficulties is they don't, for example, a person that doesn't have depth perception, they can't tell if there's a cutoff or a curb, as well as they wouldn't be able to hear a car go by when they're crossing the road, and that's why they need both a talking sign system and a bumpy curve cut where they can feel the different or the type of slopes. And the one thing that's most important that we need to have is curve cuts that are facing each direction that they are going to, not on the corner of a sidewalk. That if you have it on the corner, then a person would have to go out in the oncoming traffic just to turn around to go on the lane that they need to go to.
And there are some places that don't have sidewalks. What kind of difficulties can that present?
Well, the places that don't have sidewalk, that makes a person not have any choices to the point where they have to go into the mainstream of a road and risk their lives getting run over. That's pretty much it. It's pretty scary.
And you're familiar with a town called Eagle River. What is some of the problems in Eagle River?
Eagle River is a town out north of Anchorage, about 15 to 20 miles north of Anchorage. And what happens is that there's a street called Business Boulevard. It does not have any sidewalks whatsoever. And it goes from one shopping mall to all the way around. It's kind of like a half circle. So, but that's where the main businesses are too, so it gets kind of dangerous that way.
We're on Seminary Road in Alexandria, Virginia. On the west side of the road, we have the Hilton Alexandria Mark Center, large hotel. On the east side of the road, we have the Southern Towers apartment complex, series of large apartment buildings. Supposing you lived in one of the apartments on the east side, and your job was at the Hilton on the west side. How would you get from one to the other? Your first challenge is just to get out to the corner. There's no sidewalk next to the driveway for the apartment complex, so you're competing with all your neighbors in their cars just to get out to the street. When you get to the street, no marked crosswalk, no pedestrian signals. It's your guess as to when the left turners are done, and it's your chance to cross the street. If you're lucky and you make it to the west side, first you end up in an island separating the right turn lane. It's all grass, no sidewalk on it. Make your way across the right turn lane. There's no connection across the grass planting strip to get to the sidewalk. No one's made it easy to be a pedestrian around here.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.